There we go. All right,
All right.
perfect. Well, good morning. Thanks, Chris, for doing this, by the way. So we've got, I don't know, we got 30, maybe as many as 50 or so will be coming in here to participate, perhaps ask a few questions, beyond what I ask. So I'll just kind of filter those as needed. How are things going for you, man?
Pretty good. Had a nice Christmas and trying to settle back into the next. I got a couple busy weeks, so trying to get prepped for that.
Yeah, that's the first of the year is often that case. I've got a busy thing in the house. I got kids with piano lessons and kids running around and people doing some stuff in the house. So I'm actually out in the garage. So I don't usually have to go out to the garage to find a quiet spot, but there I am today. So anyway, hopefully it won't impede this at all. So Chris, of course I'm aware of, you've done some really impressive stuff, had a very, interesting life. Many of the folks here may not be familiar with that. If you don't mind, can you give us a little bit of an overview of your background and some of the stuff you've done over the years?
Yeah. So within the athletic environment and I guess training expertise and all that stuff, I started lifting in 1988. Started competitive lifting in 2000, which I did till about 2015. During the course of that, I was ranked #1 in the world for like 8 years straight. The last 5 or so, I guess 6 years now, I focused on doing some exhibition lifting in combination with raising money for charities that I believe in. And so my best lifts during the course of that time, I did 1,001 deadlift for almost 2 reps, which is the current Guinness World Record for the sumo deadlift. And more recently, basically the day before the shutdowns for COVID, I did 1,001 squat for 3 repetitions, making me the only person that's ever squatted and deadlifted 1,000 pounds. And I did so for reps. Outside of that, I've got an extensive background in engineering and leadership and kind of specialize in biomechanics. I have a network that I've built around, people that head up research around spine biomechanics, physical therapy, developmental kinesiology. A lot of these people are advisories on our advisory board for Kabuki Strength. And so we specialize in human movement, particularly under load, and then how that applies to athletics. So we work with about 90% of all professional sports teams in North America. So let's say Major League Baseball, for example, there's only 3 teams that we don't work with. So we do stuff on the equipment side and the education side. And so our equipment is definitely very unique because it is developed on the principles around what we believe in and what we know in as far as human movement and also loading. And so oftentimes it is very different than what we've seen in the market. It usually takes a few years to adopt because before people really start grasping what we do with the products that we do, but it's they're huge in being able to accommodate for variability in lifters as far as their leverages and differences within that and mobility restrictions and just being able to accommodate and get the joints in great positions and eliminate the negative stresses that have occurred from the equipment that we're used to using and allowing us to get a greater training effect, which allows us to train more frequently and heavier, which results in more progress. And that's why I've done the lifting that I've done to demonstrate that. A lot of people find my backstory interesting as well, which I have a best-selling book around that titled The Eagle and the Dragon. I grew up homeless in the wilderness. So we're talking foraging for food and hunting for animals and all sorts of crazy wild stuff in Northern California, dealing with living in an environment where there's a lot of drug running, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, dealt with murderers, a serial killer, human trafficking, and lots of really, really crazy stuff through the course of my childhood, which is detailed in the book. I came out of that to pursue a dual engineering degree. During the course of that, things got worse, even worse at home. So I ended up taking custody of my 3 younger sisters. I raised all of them while I put myself through engineering school, worked full time while I worked on my master's in business and worked full time. And then went down the executive route, started running companies eventually and became a sought after turnaround expert. ran and turned around automotive manufacturing companies, aerospace manufacturing companies. And during the course of that, I owned a gym and lifted at a high level and finally decided that I was doing kind of the wrong thing in the world. I love leadership. And I loved cultivating change in people, but I felt I could do so much more and help people get out of pain and live a better life through strength, through developing resilience. So I walked away from that career to found Kabuki Strength, which is the equipment and education, and more recently founded Barefoot Athletics, which is a minimalist shoe company focused on foot mechanics, build fast formula because I'm a supplement junkie. And that's where we're at today.
Perfect, Chris. I'm gonna say sorry again. I've got to just move where I am because I realize I'm not next to a plug and my computer's getting a low on battery, so I gotta walk over to another place. But while I'm doing that, I wanted to just, you've had all this, this amazing stuff, success in a number of avenues, despite coming from a background which would be, to say the least, was very challenging. How much of a role do you find that strength training or exercise has in carrying over to success in all these other ventures? I'm sure you didn't start lifting when you just left the other companies. You're probably lifting all along, I imagine.
Yeah, like I said, I started lifting in 1988. So when I was so 13. So yeah, I was 12 years. I think I was 11, 12 years old when I started lifting. And I had a fairly physical environment growing up, living in the mountains, and strength training was been really important for me for both my mental and emotional development, having that, and that's always been a cornerstone of my life. So I was that kid that nobody would talk to. I was the nerdy guy. But it's like it still became a cornerstone. I became a star athlete in high school, and then I've continued lifting from there. And it's taught me so much about the things that I need to know in life. It teaches you about discipline. It teaches you about waiting. You're not going to get, short-term results. It teaches you project planning. If you can think about these sorts of things, it teaches you to be able to test different theories and methods for a period of time and assess and analyze and put those, figure out what works and what doesn't. There's so many things that, I put into use as being a highly educated individual, very technical in my work environment through the years that play a direct role in all these things. And so that's why it's been there. So I opened my own gym in 2003 when I was working in automotive. I ran it on the side with a business partner through all those years. So, I was doing big turnaround on an aerospace company, and I'd run from there to go train because I was training to try to be the best powerlifter in the world at the time. And, I had this 4,000 square foot, then 9,000 square foot gym as a side business with tons of people in there waiting for me to show up and help them with coaching and things like that in the evening. And so out of that, I was really able to find and hone a lot of the leadership skills as well that I presented in the work environment and how those translated into the human performance environment as well, and see the cross and carryover. So I think it's really interesting. And this is something, and this is why I wrote my book, is it covers kind of the mental and emotional sides of resilience, but foundationally as human beings, we are meant to adapt to stress. If you break your arm and you put a cast on it, it starts to atrophy. The process of death and failure starts kicking in. If we don't have some stress in our environment, something in stress it can be the gym, right? So if you train, we all know this in the training environment, you're going to become stronger and more resilient. So I interchange the word strength and resilience quite a bit. Because that is what it's all about. And as human beings, we need to constantly be developing resilience to be able to grow, to live. We have to be developing resilience physically, mentally, and emotionally. And this is a cornerstone of the human condition. This is basic biology, physiology, and cannot be argued.
I've been lifting weights for over 40 years now, and I grew up on barbells and dumbbells and certain machines, and that's just the way it is. And somebody decided to invent that back in the 1920s or whenever it started, with the barbells, and that's kind of the arc of motion we're used to. I mean, you put a barbell across your back, you put a bar in your hands, and you go after it. And I don't know if there was any sort of this is optimally the best way to do things. There's people that have been lifting stones. You go to Spain and you can see the guys doing the big stone lifting contests. I used to subscribe to a magazine called Milo, and they would highlight all these different unique ways to build strength. But you are kind of pushing the envelope a little bit on the tools we have to use strength. And I'm happy to say I've got one of your bars coming, one of the trap deadlift bars. I'm looking for it. I haven't gotten it yet. I know you guys have a high demand right now. And so, but what is the problem with some of the conventional stuff perhaps?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a bit of a mix here because I'm still a big proponent of all the basic stuff. So this industry gets filled with the gimmicky stuff, the new age stuff all the time that just doesn't yield the results. So just getting back to the basic stuff, basic patterns, loading in a progressive manner, right? This is what works. And so I understand kind of the resistance to take on new things at times, but at the same time, there is some opportunity. If you put a barbell on your back, there's nothing specific about the load needing to be in that specific point as it relates to managing your spinal mechanics, as it relates to its relation to the hip position. And in fact, as it does that, you're going to have things where people like yourself, Shawn, you're an example, like our Major League Baseball players, our NBA players are an example. Ever watch an NBA player try to squat with a barbell, and everybody makes fun of them online? They're like, you don't know how to squat. Well, they're not built. Their torso length is not built to allow them to be able to be in those positions with the load in that specific spot, right? And just even there with a straight barbell, there's a lot of undue stress that's put on the shoulder. So it requires a massive amount of shoulder mobility to be able to get in position and be able to create stabilization through the shoulder, through the spine. And so we end up fatiguing some of these resources prematurely. So they're fatigued as you go into your pressing sessions or other things. And so your limiting factor sometimes is not necessarily the things that you're trying to develop. And sometimes it's putting stresses on those things in a way that is a non-recoverable. It's not something that we get adaptive. If we're cranking the joint into a bad position, we're not really developing, adaptation from that. And so what we do is take these basic core fundamental stuff that works and start taking some of those things out of that are negative or allow us to move. So like our transformer bar, we can literally move this load in space with these basic movements. We can mimic a goblet squat. Goblet squats are amazing. Anybody that's done them when you're coaching and teaching an athlete, you put that load in front, automatically you get great pelvis to rib cage alignment. You get some great engagement of the rectus, the obliques, all the core stabilization muscles come in concert together. Unfortunately, you can't really load that pattern in an effective manner to deliver results because your front delts and your biceps are going to give out, right? But we can mimic that. We can create those loads. We can move it in space, and that. What a lot of people don't understand is we're not actually moving the load in front or behind or around. The load is staying in the exact same spot. It's actually, this is physics. If the load is greater than that body weight, it's going to stay over the midfoot. Okay. You can't put it out in front. Go take a telephone pole with a giant arm off there and put the load on it. If it's not in the ground, it's going to fall over. Right. So what we're actually doing is manipulating the spine around. And so we're able to manage our spine position through management of this load and where it sits in relation to the hip joint. Okay. Sounds really technical. You just start playing around with it and it makes a lot of sense really fast. You'll find different positions that really deliver results for you individually and different clients individually, or develop different patterns. So we can actually get to where, somebody that has a horrible squat. I love doing this with our professional and collegiate sport teams because I get these people in with no training age, and they've got their no squat crew, which is like they've got deficits in their pattern and usually an injury as a result. They're not allowed to squat. And it's like, here, let's do this. And you have them squat with a normal position of load, and they're squatting like 4 inches high, knees caving in. We start changing the load, and all of a sudden they're going inches below parallel, perfect position, perfect, like everything's lined up. I'm like, what happened? I'm like, we just changed the mechanics so that that nothing can happen but it to be done correctly. So now all of a sudden we've got this forward load, which is going to load the anterior chain or the posterior chain more. But at the same time, because of the improved human mechanics, they're actually squatting deeper automatically. And so now we're going to get more engagement of the anterior chain. Oh, what do we got? Actually, all that stuff working together instead of isolating it out. That sounds a little bit maybe more athletic, right? So it's just really simple stuff at the end of the day, in my opinion, and we're missing some of those things. And Shawn, thanks for your patience on waiting for the bar, because we got hammered this year and put us a little behind. We've staffed up incredibly, bought some new facilities, new equipment, and we should be out of that pretty soon. But I hate calling it a trap bar, honestly, because it can be used for so many things now that we open it up. I mean, you can just do simple, like an ab roll out. There's no bar in the way, right? Even a curl, you can actually get a Granger full range of motion with it because you don't have a bar bumping into your body. You can pop it into an overhead position and do some pressing. There's no bar in the way, right? But that and like our Cadillac bar, our pressing bar, have a couple unique features, even in the low handle position, which a lot of people don't think about. So we sell this curved bar for benching. And what it does is we put the load below the position of where the hand is. And what that is, it's like a swing, okay? We've got center of rotation is up high, center of mass is low, and it will always find center. It creates stability, all right? But every other trap bar out there that has a low handle, a center handle position, and every other multi-grip pressing bar has center of mass and center of rotation on the same axis. And what that is, it's a teeter-totter. It can never actually find center. There is a center, but it's an infinitely perfect spot, which means it really doesn't exist. And so it's always going to be on one side or another, just like when you walk into a playground, a teeter-totter is going to be sitting on one side or another. And it seems minor, but you can take like our Cadillac bar, and you can take, I did this, I love this story because I introduced this. We were going to Major League Baseball spring training several years ago, and I knew I had all the teams stacked up. In my experience, I'm like, all the head coaches have bad shoulders. I'm like, I'm going to hammer this out. So I went out in the shop myself because it'd been in my head for a long time. I'm like, I'm going to get this done. So I made the prototype. I took it down. I'm like, test this out. And so we go into one club, and this story repeated over and over and over again. I usually visit about 3 teams a day in spring training because they're all in Arizona around, close together. And I'm like, hey, I'd like you to try this pressing bar. I'm like, oh no, same story. I can't press such and such injury 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Bad shoulder, haven't been able to even take a bar to my chest without pain. Can't do it. Their staff's all around. They've been oogling over our transformer bar, oogling over the trap bar. I'm like, here, well, just try it. I'm like, take it down. Understand that curved bar gives you an extra 3 inches range of motion. So anybody with a shoulder injury is not going to want to do it. That's scary in general. Put a plate on there. Try it. See a look of surprise on their face. Oh, that feels good. Wow, that feels really good. Put another plate on there. Every single coach ended up putting 2 plates on there and doing a number of reps, 3 reps, 4 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, depending on their strength level. They hadn't benched in years. And their staff is sitting there, jaws dropping, like, how's that feel? Gets up. There's no pain. I feel like what we did is we provide stability at that joint, right? Now that starts stacking the wrist. We start stacking the shoulder. We start getting all these things in position. The handle position. So all the handles are just a little bit different based on how far apart they are, because the further apart that you are, it changes that axis as it relates to the shoulder. So you want to change that internal to external rotational bias based on the grip width, leaving a little bit of room left for external cueing, right? So you don't want to have it perfect, just a little off. We start stacking all these things up, getting in good position, and all of a sudden you've got somebody that can't take a bar to their chest without pain, being able to for the first time in years, being able to bench, throw on a couple plates, and hit 225 for reps with no pain to a 3-inch greater range of motion, repeated over and over and over again. Not every team by the way, has a head strength coach in that condition, but there was a handful that I went through over the course of the week. There was probably somewhere around 5 or 6 exact stories just like that over the course of the week. And it's crazy what just those minor, it's very minor. All those things that I mentioned, just changing the position. So like our trap bar that you're going to get, Shawn, you've got the high handle position and the low handle position. Everybody always biases to the high handle position. They don't know why. Well, that's because when you pick up the low handle position, it automatically wants to dump forward on you. It's constantly fighting you at the wrists. You try to carry it and it's always trying to dip on you and these other things. We've offset our low handle position just a little bit, 3/8 of an inch, just enough to deliver those results. We want variability for the lifter. So we've got different brackets. So if you're training teen athletes, you can go with a narrow bracket and get them biased to the shoulder correctly. If you're training the big NFL guys or the NBA guys, they may not have big shoulders, but their legs are so wide by the time they get down there because that arc, they're grabbing a little bit wider. We can do that. We can change the handle position because maybe you want different results from the training. Maybe like a strongman might want a 2-inch handle, maybe one that spins like a rolling thunder, develop grip strength. Okay. Maybe we want a smaller handle for our MLB people that we want to protect their grip. Maybe we want it's going to vary. They're all different needs. So we allow and accommodate for being able to pick the grips that you want to be able to change out as you need to within the bar. So all really small stuff, but we're changing really fundamental movements and making them so much better through these minor revisions. And that's just time under the bar combined with actually taking time to think about these things, which a lot of equipment manufacturers don't. They look and go, multi-grip pressing bar. They do well in the market. Let's make one too. And so you have, for how many years those been around, Shawn? How many years have you seen Swiss bars? Since the 70s?
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah, for sure.
And nobody's ever changed it, and they suck. Anybody that lifts weights knows they suck. You take them out of the rack and you have to choke up on one side because they're immediately going to try to crush you in the face, right? That's one of the first things I have to train people to do is don't do that. They're like, but you have to. I'm like, no, that's just the things we're used to have to dealing with. We're so trained to deal with the lack of performance of our equipment that we just take it for granted that that's what we're supposed to do, which I think is hilarious. But same time, it provides me an opportunity of something to do with my life, I guess. So,
yeah, you mentioned the Rolling Thunder. Just a weird fact. I won the very first national championships on the Rolling Thunder way back when they first debuted it back in a strongman competition years ago. It was only like 220 pounds. So they do quite a bit more than that now, but that was the first time I'd ever used it. But I want to ask you
they actually train for it now though, Shawn.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I just went up there and did it. I'd never seen it before. I said, this is pretty cool, but I got, pretty decent sized hands. It helps. But, Art Jones developed an ALIS system back in the late 60s, early 70s. And did he get any of it right? There's different movement patterns that he does. I met, the benefit of free weights and dumbbells, we have to rely on stabilization stuff. Or is there this kind of a hybrid type concept, or is there any benefit to machines? Because some people can do machines better than they can free weights.
I think there's value in machines. So there's a lot of people in the, that barbell basic training industry, a lot of trainers that will tell you, only a barbell is all you need. Well, that's because they've got a gym that's a powerlifting, a weightlifting, CrossFit, and that's all they've got. So of course they're going to try to sell you that story. Like cables are great. You can actually get in great positions. You can be in standing position. Anytime you're rooted with your feet connected to the ground is going to be absolutely amazing. I do standing cable presses every week, actually, as part of my training. So I think cables are great. Machines can be really valuable. The problem is, in the environment where I see the industry going is they're very specialized. They're going to sit in one spot and only be used for one thing. So you need this large commercial facility, which we can see are failing now. They were failing beforehand. I think just a lot of people didn't see that. So we need things that can be able to accommodate quickly from one thing to another. And so, there's room for cable equipment, there's room for machines, but they need to be the concept and how they're how they're created needs to change. We need to, in a smaller space, be able to train multiple people in an environment and rapidly change and be able to accommodate for the differences in the lifters as well at the same time. So that's just my views on the industry, because I don't see a lot of these big giant machines being great with where we're going in the world today. And that's actually what I've been working on the last couple years. We'll be seeing those kind of start to release over the next few years for us in re-envisioning that gym concept. But because that's what I'm trying to do, is create those that will work in where we're going in the world today, to be able to do that, to be able to accommodate and change. And same thing needs to happen both with the barbell racking and things like that as well. And so that's what we hope to do. I think there's stuff out there that does it well now in some of those aspects. So a lot of cable machines can rapidly change positions and get in different things. Yeah, I'm definitely one of the ones, people that in our environment that will tell you that a lot of people won't. Yeah, there's value in them.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about, where the world is going today, obviously many people are experiencing lockdowns. They don't have access to gym. They're trying to cobble something together at home. A lot of people don't have the space. I mean, I'm fortunate. I spent, decades just throwing together home equipment. So I can do a lot of stuff now. You may argue, it's a squat rack. I've got boxes to jump on and plyometric stuff and heavy medicine balls and, all this stuff. If somebody's just at home, and this, I think this is where you're going. A lot of people are going to be stuck at home. And unfortunately, some of the gyms, these global gyms, they have these giant treadmill after treadmill after treadmill. That's probably not the best use of space. What are your thoughts on what a person could have at home in a reasonable, say they got a 10 by 10 foot area, or, a one room dedicated for that? Do you see any utility for some of this accommodating or variable resistance stuff, some of the band technology? What are your thoughts on how to build out a home gym?
Yeah. So I'm going to say you need to buy all Kabuki strength stuff first. No.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, in fact, it does work. That's kind of the pitch. Like our trap bar is built for a home gym environment. Like you can do so much with this one bar, right? But no, I mean, you need something to be able to have a barbell and manage a barbell, right? I think our barbells are great, but if you don't get another barbell, you still need something there. Having some handheld, I just put handheld weights in one category. There's lots of different options out there right now between kettlebells, dumbbells, fat bells, and there might be some other ones that enter the market here in the next few months too, that provide some versatility, so you don't have to buy as many. But hint, by the way. So bands are absolutely fantastic. Like when I'm traveling, I just throw a few bands in my bag. Like I think so many people get so worked up of, I have to have this type of environment. I have to have this type of bar with these calibrated plates and this, and get so like, you don't need all that nonsense. Like you can get a workout pretty easy. A lot of it, you just got to get up and move every day, at least 10 minutes, right? And being able to add some resistance in there. So I'm a huge proponent of bands because you can mimic up so many things really fast with that. And they take up so little space. So yeah, if you got a garage gym, you should have some screws in the wall with some bands hanging from them so you can grab them and use them. So my home gym, I have one right now, and it is about that. It's a 12 by 16 square foot space. And I have everything that I need. I have two beams for a post, connected floor to ceiling. It's not even a rack with pinholes in them. I can do anything barbell. And in that, I've got my Cadillac bar, my transformer bar, my Duffalo bar. On the floor, I've got my trap bar. I've got our handheld weights, which you'll see come out here in a little bit, but they work as both a fat bell, a fat bell, center rest bell, a dumbbell, and a kettlebell all in one. You may have seen them if you watch my videos. There's this triple handle weight thing I've been using for the last year or so. That's what we're going to be coming to market with here. But you can use whatever. Anyway, I have those. I have some bands. I've got an exercise bike. So I do a little, like on my leg day, I'll do a little BF blood flow restriction on my legs on the bike for a few minutes before I jump down there. My wife does her spin classes on that. And then I've got a simple cable setup, which you can buy from a lot of places. Spud Mark Bartley, Spud Inc. Has one. We've got one. I should probably sell the one on our site first, right? So the Angles 90 grip, if you've never seen them, they're these really cool grips that you can attach to do pull-ups or any cable machines and things like that. They're really cool. You can mimic any type of handle, basically. So we're the only U.S. distributor for that, but they're super cheap. They're like $25 or something like that. They're really amazing. They've got a little cable system that you can hook to a rack or wall as well. All these cable systems I'm talking about, it's just a cable through a pulley, and then you put some plates on it, or you can hook some bands to it or whatever like that. And you can now mimic a cable setup really easy if you don't want to invest in the machine, right? And that's all I have at home, 12 to 16 square foot space. And that's where I do my sessions if I don't make it into the office that day. I've got a full commercial gym here that has no clients in it right now. And I can do everything that I need to at home with those basic tools.
Yeah, I'm in a horse stable. The house, we had a horse stable, and I just turned that into a gym. But hey, let's talk about, and somebody's asking if you ship to Canada, but let's talk about
we ship worldwide.
Okay, cool. Good to know you guys, the rest of the world. Let's talk about getting strong. Let's talk about getting really strong. Resistance training, yeah, consistency, sleep, eat, whatever. But what are the really, some of the things is you've done some stuff that's really pushing the envelope. So what's the next step behind just consistency and hard work? Is there something, I know you talk about, speed of lifting and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there's a number of different things there that I'll make sure I try to cover. So we've got periodization of movement and specialization. We've got understanding the load vectors that you're training in and how those relate. And I'm going to start diving into all these. And we've got managing subjective and objective indicators to manage your train based on your training response. Okay. And those are kind of the fundamental things that, some base level stuff. I usually work on an annual plan with training. My last training covered the scope of 4 years. And that was around being able to develop the stabilization and ability to manage spinal mechanics to be able, 5 years actually, to be able to pull off that 1,000-pound squat and deadlift. So I set off on that journey in 2015. And so as we look at that, what we want to do is we're training for, if you want to achieve huge physical strength, it's specialized. You need to understand, what am I trying to pull off? It is not anything and everything. To pull off something phenomenal, it's going to be specialized. So figure out what that is, right? And then now understand, what does my training have to be like to get there? Okay. So if it's specialized, I'm not going to be doing that exact same thing a year out all the way towards it. I'm going to have things that are working on developing the qualities that I need to develop. So let's say the last year of training for my squat, okay, I knew that I need to develop a huge amount of strength in my upper back and just overall back strength to be able to hold that load in position. So it was a squat, so I was going to do squatting movements as well, but they were going to be less specific than the movement that I was doing. And so as the year progressed, I'm going to get more and more specific towards that goal. And I'm also going to be doing, over the course of that, working and developing the quality. So I'm going to look at the load vector of the things that I'm doing. So I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a minute. So a lot of people think about things as developing work capacity, like, hey, I'm going to do prowler sprints to develop my work capacity for legs. I'm going to do, that's fine. It may be working some aerobic and some other qualities, but it is actually not developing anything for your squat. Okay. Your squat is an up and down. It's an axial loaded vector. You're driving up. Prowler push is a front to back vector. And so developing that isn't going to help that. Okay. So it's important to understand those things. Like doing a hip thruster is not going to help me develop my squat or deadlift, but it could help me jump further. And the research is showing this actually. So, even our glute guru, Brett Contreras, has published some of that research showing just that over this last, I think, year, that it's going to have a huge effect on that, but less so on the squat or deadlift. It may be developing the same muscles, but it's not the same qualities. So for me, that squat, I need to develop the back strength. So I was doing a lot of more mixed vector loading. So obviously the lats are working in a front to back a lot of time, but I still wanted to have an axial load component. So things like a bent over rows. I did a lot of those early in that session because you have a mix of qualities of both axial as well as that front to back movement vector. I'm doing a lot of things way more specific for the lower back, like a lot of good mornings. With the squatting, I was choosing a transformer bar setting that had the load incredibly far forward. So really loading up that posterior chain, being very far away from what the squat pattern would normally be. And then over the course of that 6 months, bringing that squat into closer and closer into those positions. And then as it got closer and closer, I started pulling out some of the work that was less specific, right? So I'm going to be doing less, like in the last periods, I'm not doing heavy bent over rows because I need all of my training and recovery resources to go towards the very specific nature of what I was doing, which was the squatting. So you'll see that stuff disappear and more of the specific nature of things coming in and the volume and intensity on those coming up. A great way so as we're periodizing the movement, so that's what we just talked about, is periodization of movement, not just like, hey, going from 12 reps, 10 reps, like a lot of people think about periodization. The other thing is periodization of frequency. So the more work that I can pack in a shorter period of time, the more progress I'm going to make. Okay. So if I can go from squatting heavy once a month to twice a month to three times a month to twice a week, I'm going to continue to make more and more results from that. So in my powerlifting days, I was squatting heavy about twice a month. And then the goal was to get up to squatting heavy twice a week. And I pushed against that about 6 to 9 months out. But as I got really specific, I found that I still was not able to quite hit that twice a week category. I did on the deadlift. So I went from, like, when I was training the year-long training plan for the deadlift, I went from my powerlifting style of squat deadlifting, because I used to follow a conjugate type method. That's where that low level of frequency on this very high specific. So it was like I deadlift a couple times a month, once really heavy. I got up to where I was deadlifting towards the end twice a month heavy, once from a deficit and once from a floor. And how I did that is just slowly increasing that frequency. And then not only just adding, people think about, oh, well, frequency is great, I'm going to just start squatting 4 days a week. You don't do that. Okay. You have to build to it. Where am I at now? And how do I add a little bit? How do I go? Okay. If I'm doing 4 sets a week total, I might, well, for me, it's actually talking about the reps. Like maybe I'm doing 4 sets of 4. I might, add one more set at the end of 2 reps or 3 reps. And then the next training block, add a few more. And then, okay, now I've got 4 sets. And now I'm going to bump another session. I'm going to take some of the sets off the first session and add them to the second session so that my total load for the week has only come up a few reps. And you just slowly keep incrementing that up, right? And then maybe the new session once a week is for pulling off of blocks. And that's exactly what I did. So it was not as demanding, and then slowly working it down towards the floor. These are small changes over time. People want to just jump to, well, this is what he said is better. Let's do this. Let's do the Bulgarian method. Like, you can't, those athletes trained for 20 years to get there. Okay. Before they went those training plans that you're reading online. You don't just jump in and do that. Right. So understanding that, and a great way to understand that is looking at what kind of tolerance do we have for a spike in load from one week to a next. And so this is referencing Tim Gavitt's work. And we see that, and this is related to injuries, but we see a significant rise in injuries when we exceed a 10% increase in load from a week, total volume, from 1 week to a next. All right. So that's the kind of bumps that we want to see. So that's not week to week. So let's understand this is acute load. So 1 week versus what your average load for the last couple months or month has been. That'd be your chronic or average load. Okay. And so you can't just do 10% every week, because that's going to start bumping your average weight. It's going to exceed that really fast. The second week, you can't go 10% again, because you're now going to be 20% over your chronic load. So understanding how you increment these variables, being very specific about what you want to achieve, and managing the choices in exercises, the specificity in exercises, you're working towards those goals, right? And now we're talking, okay, now let's overlay how we're actually responding to training. Okay. And so we use both subjective and objective indicators. I do a lot of work with velocity because I'm kind of an ego-based lifter. I have trouble saying that was, my max. That was the best. I could have done more. That was easy. And it's like, dude, you did 5 reps and you were about to pass out and your blood was bursting out your nose on the 5th. And you're like, no, that's an RPE 8. I gotta, I can handle more. I know myself. So I mentioned RPE. You may not be familiar with that. It's a subjective rating. That one is based on clinical, which is actually a 1 through 20 rating. The RPE is a 1 through 10. It's just a made up rating. You can make up your own ratings. We use a 1 through 5 with our clients, and then also use what's called reps in reserve. So I want you to do 10 reps, leaving 2 in reserve. So that's going to manage your load. So you got to be able to hit something, hit a weight that you think you can hit for 12 reps, but do it for 10. Okay. It can be and we find that a little bit easier for people than learning the skill of an RPE ranking. That's a skill that has to be developed. So reps in reserve is great for like managing the load on your accessory movements, the non-core movements. And then we'll do a subjective rating overall for the workout, or that group, sorry, that exercise, not the individual set, as a 1 through 5. Basically easy to hard pushing the limits of capability, for being challenging, and so on. So use that rating. And then we can use objective, which are indicators that you're not putting your thoughts and perceptions around it. And so we use velocity for that. A lot of times in the past, velocity was used for managing speed training. We actually use velocity to manage our load. And how we do that is, at any given percentage of your max, it is going to be a specific speed. It's going to be a little bit different for every lifter, so there's no standard. So what you got to do up front is you just got to work through a profile. You got to start at 20%, 25% of your max, measure the speed, and just keep going all the way up to your max. And it's going to be a sloped line. Okay. Actually the other way. Well, I guess it depends on how you lay out the chart. And we've got a free tool. You can map that. So if you Google Velocity Book of Methods, you'll get a free download, as well as a really great article on all this stuff that I'm talking about, where you can input that and create this chart. What you'll find is 90% or 92% or 95%, they're always going to be a specific speed. What value that has is, in your training, you're never exactly 100%. If you think you have a 500-pound squat, you don't have a 500-pound squat. Rough night with some sick kids. Boss yelling at you at work the prior day. An argument with the spouse. All of a sudden, you might have a 490, a 470 squat, a 485. Just the right amount of sleep, just the right amount of food, nice relaxing weekend, but not too relaxing that we got detrained. It might be 505. It might be 507. It might be 512. Okay. Everybody thinks about autoregulation as always pulling back. And what we find in autoregulation is we actually take opportunity of every little bit of one of those increases. And we actually end up with more results over a training block quite consistently over not, when it's applied appropriately with velocity training. And that's pretty interesting. So what that does is, so now if we know 90% is a given speed, so we'll, instead of saying, I want you to do 3 sets of 3 at 90% of your max, we say, I want you to do 3 sets of 3 at this speed. And it would be 87.5 to 92.5. What would be the equivalent? And we give you the speed numbers. Okay. And you're actually going to be able to add more load and stay within that range if you're recovering better than planned. You're going to be able to take opportunity. Hey, today I can put 5 pounds on. I can put 10 pounds on. All right. Or, hey, I need to pull it back. Because guess what? I'll tell you, like, if I'm training for, 1,000-pound deadlift and I'm doing deadlifts, let's just say all the way back at like 780, it's going to be heavy. I can't differentiate whether I should have trained with 780 or 795. I'm not going to know. I don't have that level of precision. But if I look at the numbers, I can take advantage of that day. I can make sure, hey, you can also find out some days you're just not even trying. It's like, man, well, I guess I should pull back. The numbers say I should be deadlifting with 760 today. I'm like, well, first question is, am I trying? And a lot of times you'll find that, oh, if I put in more effort, and I'm going to tie back to that second. If I apply more effort, I can actually hit my numbers. And it makes you do that. It makes you step up to the game. But then you'll find these little opportunities here and there. And then, yeah, every now and again, you're going to find that it makes you need to pull back just a little bit, right? So that's the value of those. And this is how we package all this together, and you can do amazing things, especially when you prime it with great movement patterns and assessing and recovery and all the other things that we do. So
yeah, Chris,
effort-based training. That's what we need. We like to call it effort-based training instead of velocity-based training, because that really is what it is.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there's so much in there. It kind of reminds me a little bit, the work like Fred Hatfield did when he was calculating exactly how much he needed to weigh to squat 1,000 pounds way back when he was, I think he did it at 275. And I know a lot of these guys that lift are 400 pounds, and you're not, you did it at a relatively light body weight as well, which is pretty amazing. And then Eddie Cohen always talking about leaving one in the tank, following him, of course, Eddie was a great power lifter. And then I just wonder, because you talk a lot about the mechanics and then some of the biology and the neuroendocrine stimulation that we get going heavy. Is that something we have to be consistent with? I mean, is there any value in training particularly light if we want to have a big squat? I mean, is there, do we need to do reps of 20 and that type of stuff? And then the other thing I'd ask is men and women, different biology, different limb length, different muscle deposition layers. How do women and men train differently?
Okay. So, well, I'll just say that everything that I've talked about is the same for men and women. It is, even amongst men, you're going to have different insertion points of the muscle. You're going to be able to develop different power from one person to another, even given the same muscle mass, right? So we didn't cover periodization of the qualities as it relates to hypertrophy, strength, endurance, things of those natures as well. So we think about and manage this in the same way that we talk about the exercise selection. So something in the 20 rep range is probably not going to be very useful. But spending time in a hypertrophy block is going to be good. You need to, guess what? You need more muscle to move more weight, right? We've got to spend time in those strength and realization phases where we're working on the neurological impacts, right? As you're doing that, one of the things that we need to think about, so, we set up our blocks. It could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, fairly arbitrary, but may be dependent on timing, may depend on a person's response, so on. But you're going to have a training block focused on one of those qualities, okay? I'm going to be working on a hypertrophy block. So you're going to be doing more sets, more reps, more volume, less in, and a lighter weight. So you may be training in 6, 7, 8 rep range, up in the 10s, so on, during this hypertrophy block. Because of that, you're not going to be able to handle as much load. But we still want to maintain the qualities that we developed from the last block too. So if I just exited a strength block, I don't want to lose that. So depending on the lifter, so a more qualified lifter doesn't need to do this quite as frequently, but every week or two, like I said, for a newer lifter, maybe once a week, In one of those sessions, at the end of the session, you may work up and hit a heavy double after you've done your hypertrophy work. So it's still not going to be super heavy because you're fatigued, but you're going to maintain those neurological adaptations from working up and hitting a 2x2 at 95% of your max after you did your hypertrophy work. Okay. Same thing. Now I've moved from my hypertrophy block, let's say from a hypertrophy to a strength block. I'm going to every now and again, this might be every 2-3 weeks, I'm going to have a session after I'm going to work up, maybe just hit something simple. I'm not going to hit a bunch of heavy sets, but strength is my main block. Those are the most of my sessions are there. And I might work up and hit a heavy double or, 2 doubles, triple, whatever it is, whatever your training calls out. And then you might do 4 sets of 8, 3 sets of 8, something in that is going to still stimulate and maintain those qualities. You're not going to be building that. So this is at least how we do our training, right? Which is based on the scientific principles of training that we know from research, is focusing on developing one quality while being able to maintain qualities from the prior block. And that way we can keep moving up. And then as we move back into that other block, we're not starting from ground zero. It is also different than, let's say, the conjugate approach where we're trying to develop all those qualities at once, right? And find that doesn't necessarily work as well as the approach that we're doing. I'll just leave it at that. So.
Do you find, because you mentioned, you said, well, I'm squatting 1,000 pounds, 780 is heavy, so 795, I don't really know what number to pick. Do you find that some people think that, heart rate variability can be predictive on, whether you're going to go heavy or hard. And some people, I know guys like, the guys at Soren X, Richard Soren and his son Bert, they were playing with, I think, Tendo units and looking at the beginning of the workout, they do some sort of velocity-based movement. Maybe it was a snatch or a high pull. And they would say, okay, I'm hitting this percentage velocity, therefore I'm going to train a little harder today. Is there anything predictive that you think that's valid for that sort of thing?
Okay. Well, I probably didn't explain what I was doing on velocity appropriately then, because Tendo unit is a speed device that I was talking about. And so as you're warming up, you're measuring the speed of, you're not going to do something different because it's not going to tell you exactly. It's not going to tell you what weight do I need to put on the bar today to the pound, right? Or to the 5 pound. So as I'm warming up, I'm going to be monitoring all my sets for speed. And that is going to tell me where I line for my work sets. Because as I get closer, I'm going to see where I'm going to be putting that weight. That's how you make that judgment call, is by doing just that, going, well, this is supposed to be, 50% in my warm up and it's moving, about 10% faster. So that I know today I'm going to be able to probably put that much more on the bar. And as you get closer, you're going to refine that in. So 100%. And I find that this is the best way, because this is the only way that is going to tell you specifically, what do I do today? What do I do next set right now? Like, oh, it's dropping off. If this next set, I'm getting towards the bottom of my spectrum. If I'm not able to pull it off on this next set, I'm going to have to drop the weight on my last set or not do my last set. It is very much telling you exactly what I need to do today with every set, every rep, and every weight choice. And that's huge. HRV I've used for a long time. My friend Joel Jameson is a pioneer in that area. And I started working with him on and off, I think around 2010, when he started developing Bioforce. And he manages a lot of people in the fighting arena. So mixed martial artists, MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu, all those sort of stuff. And then how do they manage their balance of strength training with all of their work capacity training and training in the ring? It's pretty hard to manage, right? And so the HRV is really great at that. What HRV is not great at is telling you specifically exactly what I need to do for today if my goal is being a strength athlete. It's more of a lagging indicator. It's going to tell you, I wake up the next morning, I take my HRV and it goes, okay, I pushed it a little too hard yesterday. Now I'm supposed to take it easy. But it doesn't tell me what easy is. Is that 5 pounds? Is it 7 pounds? Is it one less set? It doesn't tell, it just gives you a guideline. Now, that is really valuable for a multi-sport athlete or somebody like a CrossFit athlete or something of that going, let's look at our overall training volume across all these different things and know how I need to to move those things up or down. And it doesn't really matter the load in my strength training per session. I just know that I need to taper it back, maybe to 90% today. Well, I got a lot of different ways because it isn't really that specific where I need to be. Does that make sense? How you would use those tools appropriately?
Yeah. One's more specific, one's a little more generalized. But
Yep.
And so my assumption is that during your workout, when you're warming up, like say I'm going to deadlift, I'm going to put 135 on the bar and pull it for a couple of reps. But you're saying I'm going to go in there and pull it with intention to say how fast I can move it, and then I can get an assessment of what I feel like today.
Yeah. So one of the problems with both measuring speed for speed work and measuring and making judgments off of really light work is, and we find this, I see this misapplied in a lot of our professional and collegiate sport athletes where they use VBT is wonderful. It's great. We're going to measure VBT. We're not going to go heavy. What I want people to do is deadlifts with 225 as fast as possible. You end up with athletes, their target is the speed, not the weight, even though it's the strength training session. And they end up modifying their technique because you can do things that will make it appear faster. And as you add load, they don't work anymore, but they're bad things. They're like, it's a deadlift high pull. It's a deadlift on your toes. It's you end up changing the pattern. Look at people that do speed benching all the time, and you'll see that it's just sloppy and all over the place. And yeah, that's super fast. Do you think that really is helping you with your max effort bench or being a better bencher? No, you're working something completely different. Think about the quality again. That is not a quality that is very useful at all. So really understanding that. So I could be super fast with 135, but it's not necessarily going to tell me anything valuable for the day. And in fact, it may change what I'm doing with the exercise completely. So be really thoughtful about how I apply the measurements. And that's why we use our speed as an output of what our goal is, which is load.
Yeah, and I can certainly see that when you're looking at powerlifting, for instance. But if you say you've got a shot putter, and I see a lot of shot putters, they're in there doing, heavy squats as fast as possible, and sometimes they're partial rep squats, or they're doing heavy high pulls or heavy hang cleans, and these are not. An Olympic lifter would look at that and say you look horrible in your technique, and they give you 2 thumbs down type of things. But at the end of the day, they're doing their sport. They're
exactly
70 foot, which is hard to do.
Exactly. And I've worked with a number of Olympic shot putters.
There's some strong people. They're very explosive. I've seen that from.
I got one of my salespeople is got some pretty good prospects at the discus this next Olympic season. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to throw last one because it getting closed down. Worked with Reese Alpha, 4-time shot put Olympian. But even those, though, you have a specific desired quality that you want with the type of movement. It's not going to be a traditional movement, but you don't want them just changing that type of movement even further to game whatever your measurement is versus just being better at that movement. You've got a specific desired speed range based on the quality that you're trying to develop. So it's going to be something that is in the 0.5 to 0.7 meters per second range, right? Something that is fast and dynamic. But within that range, I don't need them to be faster and actually go beyond the 0.7 and be at 0.8, 0.9 meters per second. That's not giving me the development that I need. Within this 0.5 to 0.7, I want them to do the quality of the movement that I have designed and have the most amount of load. If they progress the load within that speed variable, they're going to make progress now towards what I'm trying to get them to accomplish in the deadlift or in the shot put.
Overtraining versus under recovery. I'm of the belief that you should train with as much intensity as frequently as you can, and I think that's going to add up over time.
Exactly. Yep.
And so I train hard all the time. I just do it, and I recover fine, and it ends up in performance. What do you feel about recovery? I know we talked about the training side, the recovery side, maybe sleep, maybe dietary things, or we got a bunch of meatheads in here, but I mean, I'm assuming you're not proponing, everybody eating a vegan diet to recover, or what are your thoughts on the recovery aspect of it?
I walked in after I did my 1,000-pound deadlift rep. I walked in to the Swiss Symposium in Canada like a week later, and Q&A. Some young trainer gets up, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "So tell me about your diet. It's all clean and organic and blah blah." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "But it's not." I'm like, "No, it's not." Like, guess what? I eat some very dense caloric component, in the period of time. Like, it's not this 100% like, yeah, anyway, you need good quality food, but there's a balance to things of understanding what you need. I'm a huge proponent of meat, by the way. If you don't follow my channel or my wife's channel, we cook and eat red meat. I with every meal, essentially, and big proponent of that. Certified Piedmontese, they do some amazing stuff. So we partner with them and really push that. Recovery, sleep is number one. Okay, so it's easy to say. A lot of people don't get that, but you really need to think about preparing yourself for sleep and also making sure that you've got kind of the deficit built up to that you can fall asleep. Making sure that you're removing stimulants, the stress, like making sure your bed is you're only sleeping in it, that you're, again, not taking a nap because you're overtired from the night one, but now you can't fall asleep. It's like you've got to have some sort of deficit. There's a lot of things to monitor and manage sleep. I'm not going to go into that. There's some great sleep coaches out there. I use an Oura ring, but there's a lot of different other ways that you can manage the metrics on your sleep so that you can make the decisions that are changing that, going, hey, if I have one or two drinks at 5 o'clock, it's okay. But if I have them later or I have more, it's going to have a negative input on the quality of my sleep. Okay. It's really easy to be able to start seeing those things and making micro changes to your behaviors to improve that. A lot of the other things are now going to fall into the arena around blood flow. So I do a lot of things around that to stimulate that. Movement is number one. A walk, just getting up and moving around, some light recovery work. You need to, but I qualify that, you need to be moving well. So if you're tight, not in good position from your last training session, this is where doing some cleanup work, some soft tissue work, getting the joints in the great position, walking around with a little bit of, twist in the hip is not going to be great recovery. You're actually going to be developing some compensation patterns as a result of that, or reinforcing those. So this is why you would want to do, let's say, mobility work, soft tissue work. We sell some great tools and education around a lot of this stuff, but that's the value in that, is to get you back in great position. It isn't the healer. Moving is. I do things on those off sessions with blood flow restriction. It's a great tool for enhancing that. I'm a big proponent of the use of nitrates on a daily basis. There's nitrates in a lot of our red meat products and things like that. On a carnivore diet, you're not going to be able to enhance those much with like beet juice or things like that. But check out Vasoblitz if you want. It's this daily nitrate product that includes calcium lactate being the key piece there, that really enhances blood flow on a regular basis. It builds up in your system like creatine. It's going to make you look a little better. And that's why it's sold as pump products a lot of times, but people don't promote it as the daily use, which is where the value really comes in this, getting that blood flow into all the muscles, getting that turnover, getting all the great food that you're eating, that fuel to where it needs to go, is going to be hugely beneficial. So a lot of the other things that I have are around that. So getting in good positions, moving, enhancing blood flow through diet and movement, and that's key. Make sure you're eating enough of the base. Obviously, anybody on a carnivore diet is going to be getting all the things that they need for repair and recovery of tendons and collagen and meat or muscle tissue during the course of their diet. But making sure that you're eating enough. And that's why I had to laugh at the guy that was saying, well, wanted to know how many kale salads I was eating to deadlift 1,000 pounds for reps. And I'm like, no, I can't get enough calories to support my training with that.
Yeah, amen to that. And, I think with regard to movement, I think, so many of us have sedentary jobs, and maybe even more so now with everybody being locked at home. And I find for me, I need about 3 hours a day of movement. And that may just be walking around, standing, not sitting. And then in addition to my training, and my training is something fairly intense for, anywhere between, some days it's only 15 minutes, some days it's an hour. I mean, I do the intense stuff, but in addition to that, I find just the movement is just important. And I think that's
Yep.
lost a lot of that. So
it's simple stuff, right? At the end of the day, everything I've gone over is really simple, basic stuff. If you put it, it sounds fancy, but it's not.
Well, Chris, this has been wonderful. I mean, I could pick your brain for days, I think. And I think if somebody, obviously you guys have a strength training program and you offer consultations, and how do people hook up with that? How do they find out stuff? Because obviously you're helping all kinds of folks perform in the maximum capacity that they can.
Yeah, and we coach athletes of all disciplines. I mean, even the head strength coaches for some of these professional teams I mentioned are clients of ours. We work all over the board. We're not powerlifting. We just kind of use some basic fundamental stuff from there for kind of our assessments and strength development. But if you want a free consultation to see like what resource is good, because we do a lot of different types of coaching, and we also have some just subscription-based products in regards to movement and other things out there. You can schedule a free consultation call. So just get on our Kabuki virtual coaching, and you can sign up for a call on there. I don't need to push it or anything. So, if it's of interest to you, go check it out. If not, we also drop free education daily on our YouTube, as well as our virtual coaching Instagram. So Kabuki virtual coaching, you'll be able to find that stuff. Or you can probably find it via my profiles. But there's free videos dropping every day that are really great resource. But we've got a subscription-based model that everything's indexed along with other videos that you don't have access to that you can get in there. It's like $10 a month, $11 a month, or something like that. Ridiculously cheap. We do have a seminar coming up, this virtual summit. So I do need to speak to that because it is freaking amazing. We've got 54 speakers, and they're top notch. So Shawn, your name was on the list. Sorry, I didn't get you on this one. But we were thinking about you. We're going to be doing this on an annual basis, but we got 54 like industry leaders in all the different areas. We're just not doing a whole lot on the diet nutrition side of it this time. Best of the best. It's $50 if you sign up. I think it's running through the 1st, and it's going to be the first week of February. It's a week-long Q&A after each presentation. It's just look at the you've never seen a virtual summit with the list of people that we've got on it. You can check out Kabuki Strength, our products, Build Fast. All actually is all linked on my personal website, chrisduffin.com. And there's a link to a free Audible download of my book if you want to check that out, as well as one other book if you sign up for an Audible account through that link, which is a pretty cool program. But you can get it pretty much any e-retailer you want if you want to check it out. I highly recommend it.
Name of the book again, Chris?
The Eagle and the Dragon. So it's a bestseller in like psychology, motivation, self-improvement, all those sorts of categories. It's really written for the reader. It's not a story. Like I use a story to help drive home these key life philosophy pieces and this process towards introspection. So I don't tell you how to live, but help really drive you down the path of trying to find that yourself to realize your full potential.
Well, Chris, I've got a date with a couple steaks and some deadlifts here I got to get to. So I wish you well in 2021. Thank you so much for doing this. And maybe we get you back on here down the road again, if you don't mind.
I would love to, man. It was a great discussion. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much on topics. But I gotta run real quick myself. So.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys back tomorrow. You guys take care. Thanks again, Chris. Take care. Bye-bye now.